Your philosophy when it comes to sustainability goes to the very core of design, the importance of natural ventilation, fresh air, connection to outdoor space and nature, access to natural light throughout the day, throughout the year, and steering people away from the idea of approaching homes as sealed up boxes with air conditioning. What are some of the key responsibilities for architects and designers moving forward to address the carbon neutral future?
Putting the solar panels on the roof at the end of the project, whilst these are good things, they can sometimes just be guilt reducers, and we really need to go back to the first principles of orienting our buildings correctly. And from lockdown, our houses have really been tested to the limit. Prior to the pandemic, the idea of orienting your building correctly, orienting glazing correctly, were things that I really had to sort of push and explain to people and educate them on that. Whereas I'm finding post-pandemic, people are starting to get that. They're starting to understand the implications of having a house that's not well oriented, that's very dark, or doesn't have a connection to the outdoors, or the only way to keep it comfortable is close all the doors up and turn the air conditioning on. Mental health is generally front of mind now, and I think that our homes have such a large impact on our mental health. And I think that's something that people are getting now that they didn't previously. Whilst it's not a new issue, the pandemic's a reminder of how our actions impact the planet. I think we need to design in a way that's not only addressing those needs of ours for health and happiness, but also doing it in a way that takes less from the planet. I think our responsibilities extend to advocating for less but better. That's something that in my practice I'm really trying to preach, that is there a way that we can design the house to meet all of your needs, but do it with less rooms or less built form, so that then that creates opportunities for more landscape, more gardens, which can create habitat, which can create outlook, and give more opportunities for natural light and ventilation. The most sustainable house is a beautiful one, because a house that's been built well and built beautifully is something that will be cared for, will be loved, maintained, and will last and endure. Something that's sort of knocked up quickly and cheaply may serve a purpose for a time, but it'll run its course very, very quickly. The idea of less building and more landscape is something that is one of our key responsibilities. I think Branco touched on that the mansion is sort of dying out, and I think people are really starting to appreciate that a house doesn't have to be big to be a good home.
What are some creative ideas that architecture firms are coming up with to cut embodied carbon in buildings and infrastructure?
How little building do we actually need? This is a question I put to people. How little can we actually get away with? Not too small. What is the perfect amount of building that we can create to do all of those things? Can we multi-purpose rooms to serve multiple functions?
Is building a smaller home and a smart home more expensive?
It can be. It doesn't have to be. I think that's a choice for the owners to make. I think that when you build smaller, you need to consider the spaces more. My smallest project that I ever did was 32 square metres, which was smaller than the swimming pool that sat next to it. So in that case, that building did cost more per square metre, but that was a choice that the owners consciously made. They said that by building smaller and choosing this lifestyle, that gives us the flexibility now to have the things in that house that we want. A lot of the time, if a project, you get your costs back and it's over budget, you start having to cut all the things off the list that you wanted. If you're building smaller, you've got more of a capacity to keep those things in. A smaller building needs to be more considered. You can't waste any square inch, especially in a project like that tiny house I did. Hinges and cupboards and things and drawers, and this opened up and this folded down. And those were the things that were required to make such a small space work. But it's a spectrum. That's not necessarily the right way to build for everyone. There are other ways of building smaller than that. So the answer is it depends.
Can I actually add on that? Good design is not expensive. Bad design could be very, very expensive.
I think one of the best examples of that, it doesn't cost any more to put the same size window on the right side of the building.
Very good point.
How can we, as sustainable practitioners and architects, increase our influence in the housing sector?
I've got one small thing I just want to say on that. I find that the volume housing market tends to follow the architecture market. So we sort of set the trend, and if we can show that that's a good thing to be doing and there's an uptake on that, the volume builders inevitably follow.
So there's a conversation about sustainability in terms of trying to sustain and improve design, but then there's also a conversation on recovering from where we're at currently. And I guess how do you address those issues?
Two separate conversations, sustainability and recovery.
Yeah.
How do we address it?
I think it's a really good issue that you raise, and I think it can almost be simplified to the question of, is it enough to do less bad? Is that enough? I like to think about the idea of a net positive impact, and it depends on the sort of work and the sort of scale of buildings you're working on, but working on houses, for me that's all about the garden. You know, can we have less building to allow more space for more garden, more trees, more habitat, more stormwater infiltration? All of those things are making an improvement to what was there before. Little things.